Hello and welcome to another Eurogamer Newscast, and this week it's all about Nintendo. We've had a couple of exciting announcements so far this week, which point to a slightly different way of Nintendo doing things this summer. And we're looking at also Nintendo's year in general. Joining me to talk about Nintendo and all things Nintendo, it's Eurogamer's reporting team, Ed Nightingale.
Hello.
And Ishraq Supan.
Hello.
And I'm Tom Phillips. So just to recap the week so far that we've had a couple of announcements from Nintendo so far, and a kind of a mini look at some stuff just prior to this week. But this week in particular, we've had the announcement of a new Kirby game, which is coming out for Nintendo Switch as a eShop download exclusive. It looks really fun. It's like a multiplayer, 4-person kind of, I guess, like a party game, but it's probably something that we would expect to see announced in a kind of Nintendo Direct. Martin, our editor-in-chief, is joking that it's part of a year of Kirby, which follows the Kirby game that came out slightly earlier this year, which took the series open world. This is much more of a smaller scale puzzle game, or party game, I should say. And we've also had this week the reveal from Nintendo of the Bayonetta 3 release date, which is a game that's been in development for a very, very long time, and it seems like sometimes that maybe the project has sort of been just put on the back burner, but no, it is officially now confirmed to be coming out later this year. Let's talk about both of those in a bit more detail. Ed, actually, I'll come to you, Ed, with Bayonetta, because I know you're a big Bayonetta fan. Which means, Ishraq, you get Kirby's Dream Buffet, a brand new downloadable Kirby game for the Switch eShop this summer. Have you seen the trailer? What did you think of it?
It looks cute. It's the same vibe, I think, as the Forgotten Land game. It's a nice little extra, I think. There's not much to say about it from a trailer, but it does look promising.
What do you make of the fact that it's coming to the eShop? They haven't set a price yet. Do you think that potentially this could be something that they wrap into the Switch Online expansion pack?
Yeah, I don't think this will be a fully fledged game with like a retail price of £50, which is why it's on the eShop for one. And I think it's a potential contender to be part of the Switch Online expansion, just like Mario Kart and the Animal Crossing expansion. So yeah, it's a good contender. I think it does fit, and I wouldn't be surprised if they put it on the subscription.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was originally meant to be an extra for Forgotten Land, and then they sort of took it out and thought, you know what, let's spin that up into something bigger.
That's a good shout, like a little bonus mode, and then, which might have been how they sold it in the past on disc as part of that game, and it was just an unlockable thing. But now they have the eShop, and also now, perhaps more importantly, now they've got the 2 Switch Online subscription services to fill with content to try and tempt people to subscribe and then upgrade to the higher price tier. Maybe they thought, we'll keep this back and we'll release it separately.
I mean, the trailer did make me very hungry. The cake looks delicious, but it's basically competing to be the chunkiest Kirby. What's not to love?
Yeah, I like that sort of weigh-in at the end where it looks like they basically see how many things that you've eaten, and then the largest Kirby wins the day.
Yeah,
it's very cute. They just dropped this out of nowhere, didn't they? Like, we got this on a Tuesday afternoon. No one's expecting this. no one's expecting anything from Nintendo really at that point, and they just rolled it out, so to speak, as Kirby does, and here we are. But there was more to come, wasn't there? Ed, your long-awaited announcement of Bayonetta 3 arriving October 28th.
Yes.
Did this one feel a bit more expected from Nintendo?
It was rumored for a long time. Fans had faith. That faith was not misplaced. So here it is. I think, yeah, people were really hoping for it. I think Nintendo needed a big game for sort of the end of the year. Obviously, we've got Pokemon coming, Splatoon 3 in September. There was definitely a gap there for something else, and this has very much been, on the cusp of coming out and being announced. So yeah, great that it's finally coming. It looks pretty incredible. I think fans are going to be very, very happy with that trailer.
As someone who doesn't know Bayonetta that well, watching that trailer, I mean, I sort of was enjoying how nutty it was. Is this like a multiverse Bayonetta game?
I mean, it is complete nonsense, but in the best possible way. I mean, Bayonetta is a sort of sexy fantasy witch who wears her hair as a skin-tight outfit, which it comes off as she summons demons and beats up angels. What's not to love, basically? Yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of speculation from when the game was first revealed that the design of Bayonetta was quite different. And she has had a slightly different design in each of the games. But there was a lot of speculation as to, is this the same Bayonetta? Is it a younger one? Is it different? And this new trailer seems to be showing other characters that are also Bayonetta. And the press release and a lot of the information they've released on Twitter afterwards is like, oh, is that another Bayonetta? So it seems like storyline-wise, they are going down some sort of multiverse dream time travel maybe kind of thing where there are multiple Bayonettas doing stuff, which, I mean, the more Bayonetta the better, to be honest. So I'm totally down for that. And then there's another new character that you play as called Viola, who looks quite interesting. What I will say is that I feel like there are a lot of Devil May Cry references in this. Viola, to me, especially when you see her with the sword behind her back, is very Dante looking with the white spiky hair. There's also a little bit of a sort of Raiden look from Metal Gear Revengeance, which was also a platinum title. And then there's a sort of lava spider, which is a complete rip from that boss from Devil May Cry 1. So there's a lot of Devil May Cry / platinum references. I feel like this is like the ultimate platinum game is what they're making, which is absolutely fine by me.
I think the response from Bayonetta fans has been wildly positive, and yeah, people seem to be really looking forward to it. There was one other aspect of the game which also caught our eye yesterday, which we also covered, and that was the naive angel mode. You mentioned that Bayonetta is, a very, she's portrayed as a sexy character. What is naive angel mode, Ed?
It basically strips out the nudity. So as I mentioned, she wears her hair on her skin as an outfit, and when she summons demons, that hair comes off, and she is left naked. Which does allow for a lot of very amusing camera angles and lots of tongue-in-cheek moments where they're kind of just covering things.
Like
this
Austin
new
Powers.
mode, yeah, exactly. This new mode basically means that she will be fully covered in her outfit throughout. So technically, it's not canon because she can't wear her hair and use it at the same time. But it does mean that if you're out and about on the tube or the bus or wherever you are, you can play this game in public and not have people be like, "Why are you playing a weird nudie anime game?" So that's a nice bonus, and I think is probably a good thing with the wide age range of Nintendo's fan base.
Well, I was also wondering, would that potentially lower the age rating for the game? Maybe make it more accessible. I don't know what age rating the previous games were.
Well, there were rumors that it was going to be R-rated, but then there's also a lot of swearing in it. There's a lot of sexual references, and it's very violent if you're into spanking. So there's a lot of that going on. Whether that's appropriate for kids either, I don't know.
I thought it was interesting that with this mode, it's a toggle on to add the stuff that covers Bayonetta back up. and I think that the response from fans has been, haha, this is a funny thing, I'll never use it. And I think that's an
Well,
interesting
even
decision to do it that way around, rather than have it as a, oh, you toggle on the nudity back to how it was. So the default is still how the series has been previously, and it's like an optional extra setting, which, yeah, it makes it more, I think, more family friendly. When I'm looking at this game, I'm thinking, wow, these character designs are dated, and the plot explanation for why she has to be naked is as tenuous as Quiet was in Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain, where she had to breathe through her skin and therefore hang around in a bikini.
Yeah.
I like the fact that this came from a Platinum Games tweet. It wasn't a Nintendo tweet, even though the announce was from Nintendo. It's just something that clearly Nintendo doesn't really want to talk about, but they've let Platinum Games come out and say, we've added the revolutionary Naive Angel mode so more people can fully enjoy it. By turning it on, you can play right in the living room without having to worry about what's on screen, we think. Sweat emoji.
It's also just a great name, Naive Angel. But I mean, like, you can't make it up.
It is great. And I mean, also the Platinum tweet, even that one is quite tongue in cheek, but they first tweeted it in Japanese, which had like a peach emoji, which was essentially saying, "Don't worry, we're not going to use this, but you can." It's like they know exactly what they're doing. And I mean, I could go on about Bayonetta's design. I think it was probably a design meant for the male gaze, but I think it's so over the top
I don't think you
that
need to
it's
say
just
probably.
yeah. But it's become so over the top that it's just camp. It's too ridiculous that it's almost not sexual because it's just so far gone. Which I think is why actually she's become such a popular character, because it's just so outlandish. It couldn't possibly be anywhere close to realistic.
I definitely agree on that.
I just noticed, going back to the release date, it's October the 28th, which I don't know how much overlap there is between players, but that's the same release date as Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, I mean, probably not
There's
much.
something for everyone.
Yeah, especially with the Naive Angel mode. It's interesting. I mean, looking at the release schedule for Switch now, you've got several major games coming out, which have firm release dates over the next, the rest of 2022. So we've got Xenoblade Chronicles 3 coming out 29th of July, and then there's about a 5-week break there until Splatoon 3, which is obviously going to be very, very big for Nintendo. I imagine like a lot of their back end of the year marketing is going to be based around that. They've also got the new Switch OLED Splatoon 3 design coming out to commemorate that. Then you've got Bayonetta 3 coming out 28th of October. You've also in October got Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which is a Ubisoft game, but obviously it's got Nintendo's characters in, and it's going to be this year's biggest Mario game by some margin. And the first game was proper quality, so I think it's up there with everything else that Nintendo's doing. And then in November, a couple of weeks after Bayonetta, is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So like people have been waiting for a direct, and people have been waiting for big news on Zelda, among other things. But there really is a consistent release schedule here for the next, like if you're counting Mario Rabbids, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in 5 months that are arguably blockbusters, which is not bad, is it?
It's very good going from Nintendo, considering Microsoft have very little, Sony have God of War, in terms of sort of the second half of this year. I think it really is, when you look at it purely in those numbers, it's definitely Nintendo's year. How much of that is a knock on from the last couple of years of the pandemic? Maybe that's had an impact as well. But there are far more Nintendo games than anything else coming out this year, which is definitely impressive. I think maybe a lot of those series are series. I don't know. I can't talk. A lot of those I think are very popular in Japan. Splatoon is huge in Japan. Bayonetta is, Xenoblade that's out soon. They're all very. I mean, they're popular worldwide, but I think they're very, very much popular in Japan as well. So I don't know if that's taken a bit of the edge off the sort of global view, but these are going to sell hugely in Japan, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering as well, up to now this year, we've had a really good selection of games from Nintendo. Pokemon Legends Arceus, easy to forget, that actually came out at the start of this year. We've also had Nintendo Switch Sports. We've had Kirby and the Forgotten Land that we mentioned earlier. There was Mario Strikers Battle League, like not a massive game, but a consistent seller. And Fire Emblem Warriors as well, the most recent sort of the spin-off that just came out there. So Nintendo seems to be, servicing all of its franchises that there are decent sized audiences for. Not Zelda, obviously, and we're not going to see a brand new big Mario game outside of Mario Rabbids this year. But that is like 10-ish games from them as a first party publisher this year. That's 10 more than Microsoft have had. Their only first party release, if you can call it that, I mean it is because it's Bethesda, is that side scrolling game.
Pentiment.
Thank you. I always forget the name of
from Obsidian.
Yeah, it looks a bit like kind of like the Kirby game, like a game that they've sort of been developing as a fun thing that they'll throw up on their subscription service. Of course, it's an Xbox game, so it'll go into Game Pass on day one, but it's not like going to set the world on fire. But that's Microsoft's only thing this year, right? That's incredible. And then Sony, yeah, they've got a couple of blockbusters this year. They had Horizon. They're going to have God of War. That's now confirmed. But still, like I think what you were saying, Ed, this is Nintendo's year. I mean, kind of by the process of at least one of those other publishers, those rivals, not turning up. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, there's obviously going to be a lot of talk of Elden Ring Game of the Year, and it's just because it's the game that everyone's talking about so much. So I think that has sort of taken over the sort of online discourse, let's say, as the most talked about game. But yeah, when you look at the numbers in terms of how many games are released and how popular they are, like Nintendo games are definitely at the forefront.
It's really interesting to see as well the charts that come out every week that we get to see here in the UK, but they're representative of how Switch is doing it elsewhere too. And still, consistently, the best boxed release games that you can buy in a shop are Nintendo games, which are still selling years and years after launch. So things like, well, Breath of the Wild, but also Mario Kart, Animal Crossing. I think Nintendo, throughout the last 2 years, has consistently managed to keep their console in stock. It's always appealed to a very broad base of users, and it's still attracting more users to it now, and they're still picking up like their copy of Mario Kart with the console. Still seeing it in the charts. I guess my question is, Ishrat, how long do you think the Switch, the current model Switch with its various spin-offs, can last? If it's still selling, is Nintendo looking to replace it?
Yeah, I think Nintendo were graced with good luck during the pandemic and the chip shortage that they were using what is now years old hardware for the Switch, and so they already have production on the line, and it's much easier to build, and also it's relatively cheap compared to the new consoles, which means that they can keep selling them. And I think they have such a huge player base. I don't think there's much incentive for them to like move everyone over to a new platform, especially with all their developers being versed at making games for the Switch and optimizing games for the Switch for years now. I think that's part of the reason why they have so many games on the lineup, whereas Sony have one, two, and Microsoft
Gran
have...
Turismo, actually, I forgot that. There, so they
yeah, and Gran Turismo.
We always forget Gran Turismo.
But I think the Switch is showing its age. You sort of wonder how something like, especially Bayonetta 3, how much like would it look even better on a new Switch hardware. It's possible we might see something next year concerning a new Switch. I mean, when the new Zelda game does come out, it does tend to coincide with the release of a new Nintendo console. So perhaps with Breath of the Wild 2 we'll see a new iteration of the Switch. We only have to wait and see, really.
You're thinking
That's
like
the thing. The last 3 consoles have all launched. Do I mean 3? No, 2. No, I do mean no, I mean 2. Sorry, have had a Zelda crossover. So you had Twilight Princess on GameCube and Wii when that came out, and then Breath of the Wild was then Wii U and
Switch.
So it feels like a Zelda crossover game is kind of the thing to launch a console with nowadays, and I think that's kind of the big question now with Nintendo is when is Zelda coming out exactly, and will that coincide with a new console? Because I think what's interesting is that this past couple of weeks there have been quite a few different announcements with these new games, and also the Splatoon console and other bits and pieces. All of that could have been wrapped up in one direct, but instead they've chosen to do that as lots of smaller announcements. And that, I guess, is interesting because then they individually get a bit more attention. But I think that if Nintendo were to say, right, we've got a direct coming, people are going to immediately jump to the conclusion of, great, we're going to hear about Zelda. And if that's not ready yet, then it's intriguing that they have decided not to do that. I think that is therefore building up even more hype for when they do eventually drop a direct, because it literally has to have Zelda in it. So that makes me feel like, they've delayed Zelda. It's clearly not ready to be shown just yet. They want to do a big gameplay reveal, I presume. But will that also coincide with a console? And maybe the console isn't ready yet. It also makes it tricky. Is that going to be a crossover thing between Switch and the next Switch? Because they've already shown gameplay footage. Whether that was Switch footage or whether that was secretly from a future console, that's going to be very awkward for them to manage, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen any suggestion from the footage that's out there currently that there isn't anything that the Switch can't do from it. But yeah, if we're looking to next year to see a new Switch, then I can't see a better title to launch it with than the new Zelda. It's their track record now of launching it with that. I mean, this has been written about in the past, but there has sort of been a shift at Nintendo from we need to launch our consoles with a Mario game to let's launch it with a Zelda. Let's get the more hardcore audience in on day one. Those are your first adopters that will evangelize the system and talk about it, and the casual players will come over time. There's less of a push to get people massively in on day one, though, of course, like Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, day one on Switch Pro to HD, whatever you want to call it, 4K.
Super Switch.
Yeah, it is massively exciting for me. One interesting thing I was thinking about just then, actually, is if we're talking about Super Switch next year, how does that play into the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC schedule, which, if you're subscribed to Switch Online Expansion Pack, or if you've bought it, you have been promised drops of content through to the end of 2023. If you are... it would just be odd to me to launch a system that does not allow you to play that content next year while it's still releasing.
I suspect that whichever the new console is, it will have backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
I mean, Xbox and PlayStation have made a big deal of that for the PlayStation 5 and the
they have,
Xbox Series
but
consoles.
this is Nintendo we're talking about. I really hope that that's the case, and I think it's a very smart thing for them to do. I would imagine that whatever they do next, because the Switch has been so successful, they do not need to completely reinvent the wheel with it again. They did
exactly
with Wii U. I mean, Switch is obviously an evolution of that concept where you've got something in your hands that you can also play on the TV. But the form factor of the Switch, and a lot of the stuff that's really worked for them this generation, like the hybrid nature, I don't expect that to change for the next Switch. And I would really hope that your game library and the ability to play games from the Switch, which has a massive catalog now, is something that's kept for the next generation. And maybe it just looks a bit nicer on whatever hardware's coming up next.
Maybe that's why they haven't announced it yet, or they're a bit reluctant to, because maybe it's not the big innovation that their previous consoles have jumped towards. And like you say, I think just a more powerful Switch would be fine, but maybe they don't want to break up the user base, or maybe they don't feel like that's enough of an innovation to release it. I think, as we've said, the Switch is lagging a bit behind in terms of power, so it definitely needs to be more powerful. Whether that needs a different cartridge size or something else entirely, do they want to go digital only? I think the main thing that they need to push is Switch Online and the online implications of the console. I think that needs to be the main innovation that they need to really expand on. And it's not even an innovation; it's just bringing it in line with everything else. But I think backwards compatibility has to be a major part of that, and increasing the SNES, the N64 games, all of that, bringing all of that into a whole new console as sort of the ultimate Nintendo gaming console that you can still play your Mario Kart on, but it's also powerful enough to play your next Zelda on. That, I think, is probably enough of a draw for a lot of people.
I also think they're just learning from the release of the new Nintendo 3DS, which came out with not much fanfare, and I think it ends up with very few games that worked exclusively for that device. So I think they do need a differentiating factor for whatever the new console is, so that people buy it, but also it keeps the same legacy features that you come to expect from the Switch. So it's a difficult thing for them. Also, I just don't think they have an incentive to, because the Switch is still selling. I mean, it is. They really don't need to make a new console if based on sales figures alone. But I think it'll happen eventually. I think there's a reason why we haven't seen, like, say, a sequel to like Super Mario Odyssey and many of the other big first-party titles, because we're just waiting for the new console.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some clues to what the next console will be in the stuff that was reported a year ago, actually, on what Switch OLED, which was back then sort of widely referred to as a Switch Pro, was going to be. And there were reports, I think Bloomberg said there would be some form of graphics boosting going on for the console, and then that, for whatever reason, did not materialize in the final product. And there were various conversations there about, was this previously in the specifications? A lot of the other stuff that Bloomberg reported was accurate. Did it get changed during production? If so, it's very likely, looking at the graphical chip shortage and component shortages that have plagued all companies over the past year, whether that was just something that they couldn't do then, but they hope to do next. And maybe that's what we'll see. And yeah, it will be this sort of souped up Switch that's still a Switch. And as you say, Shrek, the Switch is still selling. We're not in a situation where we were with the Wii, which was a massive success, and actually had a very steep decline in its last couple of years as attention moved on. It sort of, I think it was 6 years between Wii and Wii U, but the last couple were really like it sort of limped to the finish line. Wii U had a lot of issues, and the Switch came along much quicker, I think, than Nintendo were originally planning to release it. That isn't the case this time, so we're in a different situation. Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. Maybe to wrap up then, just thinking about how Nintendo is talking to fans at the moment, doing this drip feed rather than a direct. Do you think that's do you think that is a success, Ed? Is that capturing people's attention?
It definitely allows for more momentum behind individual games, and I think that they have done like an entire direct on. I think they had a whole one on Fire Emblem. They had a whole one on Xenoblade. It feels like they're moving away from, let's have a direct that's loads of announcements, and let's have a direct on just one game to just really do a sort of deep dive on it. And I personally actually quite like that, because I don't like it when it's just, here's a load of trailers, because I could just watch a YouTube playlist of that. Like, I want some insight. I think, we were talking about this with the sort of E3 or non-E3 stuff. We want the return of E3 because we want some insight into these games that we're going to be playing. We want to know more details about them and show what is the gameplay going to be like, not just here's a 2-minute, trailer of the story. So I quite like that they're doing that. And it just really gives a lot of emphasis on specific games. It means that maybe there are people out there that might not have considered Xenoblade before, but because there's this big focus on it, they're like, actually, that does look really good. Maybe I will get it. I feel like Nintendo games are individually more of an event than maybe other consoles have. I mean, Sony have definitely tried to do that with the amount of marketing behind Horizon and the amount of hype behind God of War. That's definitely going to be an event as well. But I feel like Nintendo really put an emphasis on each game as a big event throughout the year, and I quite enjoy that, to be honest.
Ishrak, is this the death of the Nintendo Direct?
No. I mean, I think they have a new strategy, which is a small drip feed of small bits of information here and there. But I think they're still going to have a Nintendo Direct for your big titles. I think we're going to expect one for Breath of the Wild by the end of the year.
You think we'll hear about Zelda this year?
I think they have to show something by the end of the year.
I disagree. I think they won't.
Just to keep the momentum up. So,
I think there will be directs for all of the other games that are coming out this year, but I think they'll hold Zelda back till after Christmas.
Really?
Yeah, because I think if we're saying that it's Zelda and Switch are gonna Super Switch are gonna launch together next year, I think that they will want to promote their Q4 slate as much as possible, sell as many existing Switch models as possible, clear out those warehouses, and then after the holiday season is over, that's when they start with Zelda Super Switch day one, coming in May. Pre-orders now, and everyone who bought a Switch at Christmas is like, guess I'm buying another Switch.
Well, that's the thing. When would that direct take place? Because I guess August is summer. September, they're going to want to push Splatoon. October, they're going to want to push Bayonetta. November, they're going to want to push Pokemon. So where does Zelda fit in with that? That's going to draw attention away from those releases. And yeah, you're right. If it comes with a new Switch console, they're going to want to, I guess, have a fresh start in January of January 1st. Right. As soon as possible. Let's give us like a half an hour direct on Zelda. Oh, it's a new console, pre-orders tomorrow, and then it comes out in May.
Well, you heard it here first. January 1st, 2023. Zelda and Super Switch announced. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Ed, Ishrak, for joining me again this week talking about all things Nintendo. Thank you if you've watched this far. It's much appreciated. On Twitter, you can find me at TomPhillipsEG. Ed, where can people find you?
At Ed_Knights with an N.
And Ishrak?
It's ISHRXQ_.
Awesome. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.